Okay guys, welcome back. So in this video, we'll be focusing on how we can get our player 2 character to move the same way we can have our player 1 character moving. So to recap what we did in the last video, when we play the game, we set it up so that when we press the W key on the keyboard, our character moves up. When we press the S key on the keyboard, our character moves down. And when we're not pressing anything, the character just doesn't move at all. This is great for now. What we want to do is we want to make it so that our player 2 character moves the same way when we're pressing the key. So in this case, we want our player 2 character set up so that when we press up on the keyboard, player 2 moves up. When we press it down on the keyboard, player 2 moves down. And we're not pressing anything, player 2 is not moving. The same as player 1, just we're using different keys. So let's get that set up. The first thing we want to do is we will focus a lot on player 1. Let's turn our attention to player 2 now. And all of the components we added to our player 1 character, we're going to now add to player 2, like that. So I'm going to go over to player 1, and I notice that I have 3 different components. I have a rigid body 2D, which controls gravity and physics for the object. I have a box collider 2D, which makes the object solid. It makes it so object can't pass through it. And I have my Pong movement script. So I'm going to apply all of those components to this new object. So let's do it. I already have Pong movement here, so I'll do this. And I'm also going to assign rigid body, make sure we're always doing 2D. And let's do a box collider 2D. Now, with the rigid body, there's a couple of settings we need to change in here. If we look on our player 1, we notice that in rigid body 2D, a lot of this stuff is the same as player 2 by default, but there's a couple of things we changed. Under constraints, we set it to freeze rotation and freeze the X position on the first one. You want to do the same thing on the second one. Why we freeze in the X position? Because we don't need to move left and right. We only need to move up and down. So we don't need to worry about it moving left or right. Why we freeze in rotation? We don't want our character to move or rotate. We just want it to keep staying straight. So we freeze the rotation as well. And with that, we're good to go. So we assigned the script on both characters. Let's play the game and see if it works. Okay, so if I press W, player 1 moves up, but you also notice that player 2 is also moving up. And now, I don't know about you, but I like it when I'm playing the game that both characters have slightly different controls, so that one player is not controlling both characters. So let's set that up. Another thing we notice is that the Pong guide keeps moving down. We can change that easily. So we'll change both those things. So first, I'm going to tackle the easiest thing, which will be just getting our Pong character to not move when you're not touching anything. To do that, I'm just going to simply go over here where it says mass. Actually, no, not mass. I'm going to go to gravity scale and set that to be 0. When I play the game, you'll see the character doesn't move. So, almost good. We just need to separate the control for player 1 and player 2. Let's do it. So, how are we going to separate the control for player 1 and player 2? We're going to use something called variables to store the actual key input for player 1 and player 2 so that we can change the different keys in the game. So what do I mean by that? Well, I'm going to go into the Pong movement script by double clicking on it. And we're going to take a look at what this script is doing. So right now we have 3 conditionals. Our first conditional checks if we're pressing a key called W. So we have input, which is any input on the keyboard. We're getting a key, and we're getting a key code W. On the else if statement, we're getting another input, getting another key, and we're getting the key code S on the keyboard. And if we're not doing anything, this is all 0, which is great. So, what we want to do is we want to actually store this key code information inside something called a variable. Now, what is a variable? A variable is simply a container for storing data or information. So, what data are we going to store in a variable? Well, what data can we store in a variable? We can store multiple different types of data. There are various different data types that are universal across all programming languages, such as a string, data types. We can store a string, an int, a float, or a boolean. So these are data types that are universal across all programming languages, but inside of Unity we have other data types we can use. For example, this key code right here is highlighted blue because the key code is actually a data type that we can access and change inside the game. So how are we doing this? First, I want to get the key code data type. So I'm just going to type in key code, like so. And this will get the data stored inside of key code. And I'm going to assign a variable. So I'm going to name this variable anything I want. In this case, I'll name it something like this. Move up. And close that statement. So what did I do here? I got the type of data I want to access. In this case, I got a key code. And I'm storing that data or information for a key code inside the variable move up, like so. So I'm going to save my game, and let's go back to Unity. So when I save the game, and I go to my player 2, and look at the script, you notice nothing changed. Now we want to be that when we're using this variable, we can actually change what the key is inside of the editor and not have to go back to the code. How do we do that? Well, right before we have the key code and right before we're assigning the type of data we want to change, we want to type in the word public. So the full variable will be public, which is making this variable public to end the game. Key code, which is the data type we're getting, and move up, which is the name of the variable that we're assigning this data type to be stored in. So whenever we save this and we go back to Unity here, when I save, Unity will update, and you'll now see that variable that we put up here called move up, we can now access this inside of Unity. That's all because we made this variable public so we can see it in Unity. So I have the variable called move up, so I'm going to assign this move up to use the up arrow. So I'm going to click on it, I'm going to scroll all the way down until I find up arrow and assign that here. For my player 1, I know that I want to assign move up to be W on the keyboard, like that. So now when I play the game, it still moves up, but it's not moving up. It still moves up, but both the characters are moving up. Why is that? Well, that's because even though I made the variable here, I still need to use that variable down here. So right now I know I want the move up variable to control when the character is moving up. So I'm going to replace where it says key code W, and I'm going to replace that with move up, like so. So now when I save this, wherever key is being assigned in Unity for move up, that will be the new key that controls moving up on that character. So I play the game. If I press the W key, my character moves up And if I press the up arrow, the player 2 moves up as well. That's all because we stored the information for moving up that key code inside of a variable, and we can change that variable anytime we want inside of Unity, like so. So we're just going to make a couple more variables. We want to make a variable for moving down, so I'm going to do public. I'm getting key code because I know I want to change a key, and do move down like so. Or you want to close it with a semicolon. And down here, I want to replace it where instead of having key code S, I'm going to get rid of that, and I'm just going to do move down, so I can get that variable. I save that, go back to Unity, and when it updates, you'll see Pong movement V1 now has moved down. I'm going to click move down, and this is for my player 1. I'm going to assign this to be the value of S on the keyboard, like so. For player 2, I'm going to assign this to be the value of down arrow. Like so. Now when I run the game, if I press W, I move up. I press S, I move down for player 1. And player 2, I can use the up arrow and down arrow to move the player 2 character. Like that. So that's how you can use variables to store information or store data and change that data inside of Unity however you see fit. So that's great. One other thing I'm going to show you just to optimize your code a little bit more is I'm going to show you how you can change the speed using a variable instead of having to keep going back into Unity to change your player speed. So say you want your Pong character to move faster or slower. You don't want to have to keep going back into the code and changing the number like this, do you? Because I don't know about you, but I find it a little bit repetitive and I don't really want to waste that time. I want you, instead of going back into the code and changing it here, I want to store this number inside of a variable and be able to change that inside of Unity. So how do I do that? Well, I'm going to make another variable, and I'm going to make it public so we can see it inside of Unity. Now, I want to get a number, but I want to get a whole number. To get a whole number, you want to use the data type int, which stands for integer. And I'm going to give this integer a name called speed, so that whenever we type in speed, we know we're getting an integer value. And I'm actually going to assign this integer to, by default, be the number 5. Because as you can see here, I constantly use the number 5 inside the code. So I'm going to assign it a value of 5. How do you do that? You click the equal symbol, and only do one equal symbol. That means assign in computer science and encoding. And we're going to assign the integer speed to be value of 5, like so. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to replace all instances where I have 5 with speed. Here, instead of -5, I'm just going to do negative speed. And whenever the program is run, the computer will know that whenever you see the word speed, it's going to get the integer number 5, like so. So I'm going to save this, go back inside of Unity, and you'll see we have a new public variable called speed. And it's automatically been assigned a value of 5. So that value is the same for both player 1 and player 2. And the cool thing is, if I want to, for example, make player 1 really fast, like at 100, actually not too fast, let's make it 19. But I want to keep player 2 the same speed, I can do that just as easily, and when I play the game, you'll notice that player 1 now moves really fast, whereas player 2 still goes at the same speed. So this concept of variables is very powerful, because you can always assign a variable to any object and change that variable at any point you want in the code or while the game's running. So that's it for this video, and I'll see you in the next one.